I see that Suzanne is with us now, so welcome to Suzanne, and whenever you're ready, please share your presentation with us.
Hi guys, thank you for inviting me to be part of this. Really appreciate it. And if you have any questions during the presentation, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm also will be looking for the chat in case you have anything in there that you'd like to discuss specifically. So with that, can I get the screen share on my screen? And let's see here. Can you see this okay? Everyone? Okay, wonderful. So my name is Suzanne Asha Stone, and I am the new director of the International Wildlife Coexistence Network. We are building an organization that is focused on coexistence measures being applied through the support of local communities. And one of the projects that I wanted to talk to you about today is the Wood River Wolf Project, which involves wolves, sheep, and very, very rugged terrain in central Idaho. And so many people don't know where Idaho is. They often even get confused in my own country between Idaho, Ohio, and Illinois and other I words, but I'll show you here on our map too, where we are located. And sorry. So in the blue, the United States, Idaho is there where the arrow is pointing in the northwest corner of the state. We're part of the Northern Rockies, kind of squeezed between the Northern Rockies and the Pacific Northwest. Yellowstone National Park is to our right, and wolves were reintroduced into our area in the mid-1990s, both in Yellowstone and in central Idaho at the time, trying to rebuild our population of wolves on the ground and help rewild our system in the Northern Rockies. Our project area, if you look at the map on the right and down below, this is the shaded areas represent the different phases of our project. And when we started off at about 100 square kilometers, we are now enlarged into that entire gray area. So we're covering national forest lands, very large mountain terrain, and grazing allotments for at least 5 sheep operations. This year we had about 17,000 sheep in our project area. In the Western United States, wolves kill more sheep than cattle, and pretty much everything kills more sheep because sheep are so vulnerable to predation. And as a result, it's had a pretty significant political toll on wolves here in our region. In Wyoming, the wolf management plan created a no wolf zone across nearly 90% of the state, meaning that wolves can be shot on site at any time. And they're really not being allowed to go outside of the Yellowstone National Park and the national park boundaries in that area. In Idaho, our Fish and Game Commission just opened season to year-round hunting of wolves. Even in our project area, we lost a mother wolf and her 4 pups this last spring because of such an aggression towards wolves in the region, and much of that's really stimulated by the animosity over the livestock losses. So dealing with those is a really important part of the work that we're doing. I've got a co-presenter here. So in 2007, we started our project because of essentially a train wreck. We had wolves denning in a place that was very popular for people to go out and to watch the wolves as they were raising their pups. And then sheep came onto the forest. They were unloaded in very large 18-wheelers, several thousand sheep, right into the area where the wolves were denning and where they had gone to rendezvous site with their pups. As a result of that situation, most of the time it would lead to wolves being killed because people felt like they couldn't be tolerated once they started killing sheep. However, we were already working with some of the producers in the area to use non-lethal tools, and we decided to try applying them across a really large landscape with all of the bands that are working with us. This had really never been done before, and in the literature at the time, it was the non-lethal alternatives were being dismissed as being too costly, too impractical, not effective. But we realized at the time as well that no one had actually tried it. So after the incident with the Phantom Hill situation with the pack there, the pack was in jeopardy, but we were allowed to use the non-lethal tools that we had at the time to try to stop the depredations from occurring. And I think the government really thought that we were going to fail, that there was just really no way that this could be done on such a large landscape. The little cartoon in the corner is just the local paper making fun of us a little bit, that we would have the audacity of thinking that we could actually control what was happening between wolves and sheep in such a large landscape, using things like the turbo flattery and other devices that I'll show you here in just a moment. A lot of skepticism over whether we would be successful or not. The first thing we did was to use the flattery, and this was before it was electrified and turned into turbo flattery. This is 2007, 2008. And I've been working with Dr. Musiani from the University of Calgary to help test these things out in the field. And this was the first use of it in a really large landscape like this. So we put the sheep behind the turbo flattery at night and then allow them to graze during the day. This area looking back into the mountains here, you're actually seeing the area where the wolves were currently back there taking care of their pups. The wolves did come and investigate, but they never crossed the flattery line for the rest of the grazing season. So the picture to the left is basically what they would do at night before we put up the flattery for the night corrals, and then the second picture is once we had them installed in these night corrals. We also established a community stakeholder team to kind of walk us through some of the goals, objectives, to develop what the project would look like by involving all of the producers, by involving all of the agencies that were on the ground. And then we set up a steering committee composed of people from that to help make decisions. And a lot of people in the project area did not like wolves. We've never required them to like wolves. There's a lot of animosity there toward wolves. From the agricultural perspectives. But what we decided is that we could agree on a common goal, and that was to minimize livestock losses and wolf losses by testing these non-lethal tools to determine if they could be applied across a larger landscape. One of the first things that we needed to do was to learn how to investigate where wolves were present on the landscape. And this was essential just so that we could get a better understanding, not only of where they were at rendezvous during the high conflict time that we had early on, but also then about, where did they move from there? What were their habits? Where were they focusing on, different parts of the ecosystem that we're working in? Because this is all sheep country, essentially. The bands would be moving through a lot of this country, and if we could avoid having the sheep and the wolves being on top of each other, that was really helpful as well. So just understanding the behavior of this particular pack of wolves was essential in helping us plan for the rest of the grazing season. We also looked for things like, scat, kill sites, anything that we could learn more about the actual behavior and characteristics of this particular pack was recorded, and we started collecting data on everything we could record. So where the sheep were, where the wolves were, where we were finding tracks, scat, public reports of wolves, and just to be able to determine what was happening, the interactions that occurred between the sheep and the wolves during the course of the grazing season. One of our best tools is livestock guardian dogs. Typically, the ranchers were only using 1 to 2 dogs per band before our project, but we helped them build those livestock guardian dog numbers to 4 or 5 dogs per band, and then also help them understand that during the springtime when wolves have really young pups on the ground, the biggest threat to the pups is strange wolves. and they view these dogs as being strange wolves. So wolves can be very aggressive in the springtime toward the dogs, and you have to be able to protect the dogs and the sheep at that point in time using other methods, and avoidance of interaction is really essential. But then during the course of the grazing season, as we go into July, August, September, the dogs are more of a deterrent than they are at that point an attractant. And having a strange pack of wolves helps keep the wolves at bay, if you will. Our herders were also incredibly essential. They're out on the ground 24/7 with the sheep, helping them understand what kinds of things caused wolves to be interested in the sheep, like if there was a dead or dying animal around sheep, that wolves are a scavenger as well as being a predator, and that would draw in wolves and other predators as well. So, just looking at it from the animal husbandry perspective, and then helping them learn more about seeing the world through the eyes of the wolf, really more about through the nose of the wolf, what would attract them to the sheep, and then what would deter them away. So the herders have been incredible partners for us. These are some of the tools that we use. Fox lights, we were the first in North America to use fox lights outside of Australia. And we're really grateful to Ian Whalen and his team for helping us be able to expand the use of those into North America. And they've just been a tremendous tool for us. They're a light that comes on at dark. If you see them out in the woods, they almost look like somebody walking around the woods with a flashlight. It really denotes this sense of human presence. And all of these tools are supposed to do that. I mean, that's their purpose, is to let wolves know that humans are around. And because we are the biggest threat to wolves, they tend to want to avoid us as much as possible, especially when they feel like there are air horns, lights, things like that. This pistol there is for a racetrack, so it's just a starter pistol. We only use the non-lethal tools and as deterrents. We documented the presence of wolves as they overlapped with sheep. This picture was taken about 48 hours apart. I'm sure this wolf is probably having rolling in sheep poo, so you can take it back to the to the rest of the pack and tell them what activity he's finding out in the woods. That's how basically the wolves' world is through their scent. They have an incredibly advanced sense of smell, and they really communicate quite a bit through it. So after collecting the information for 7 years, the first 7 years of the project, we were able to compare what was happening in our project area, where we had close to 20,000 sheep or more, with the adjacent areas where thousands of sheep were also being grazed, and then do a comparison between the two. The unprotected area, they were not using these tools and methods proactively. They weren't using them really at all. And so just looking at the difference between where we were proactively providing deterrence and keeping the wolves and the sheep apart versus the other area, it was surprising to us. We had a total of 30 sheep killed in our project area during that 7-year period. And again, that's out of somewhere between around 20,000 sheep being present in the project area during the course of the grazing season. So 30 sheep in our area, over 300 in the adjacent areas, so over 10 times more. And they were killing wolves in the protected area or the unprotected areas regularly. So they would kill entire packs, but because they weren't using the non-lethal, new packs would move in and they would then kill more wolves and more sheep would die. So it was really a stark comparison between the two. It gave us real confidence that these non-lethal methods they're incredibly effective, and even over the long term. So this is looking at that same period of time. We had and expanding out to the first 12 years of the project, we had 1 wolf killed in our project area in 12 years for the in response to the conflicts with livestock, whereas there were packs and we actually don't know how many wolves were killed. We know entire packs were taken out in the unprotected areas, and that was repeatedly done. So it was a really stark difference between the two, and the results were pretty astounding. This is a map of Idaho. You can see this is our project area. We had 4 sheep that were killed that entire grazing season, as opposed to what was happening around us in the outside areas. And then we have our paper. It's available online through the Journal of Mammalogy. It's free to download, where we summarize all of the results from our paper, from our study. And that was just the first 7 years. We've just completed year 13. Again, it's been an incredibly successful project over the long term. And the longer that we go and are able to show that wolves can be on the landscape, even in this heavy concentration of sheep, and sheep that are moving about the landscape, it just gives this more confidence that these non-lethal measures are working and that they are actually preferred, because we're having fewer sheep losses. We're certainly having being able to demonstrate a much lower impact to the native predators. And it's not just wolves, it's wolves, bears, mountain lions, the whole gamut of predators that are typically killed in response to depredations. And we're spending less money doing it than what they're spending to kill wolves and the other predators in the adjacent areas. So skipping through that, I wanted to show you just kind of what the key elements were. We felt like, looking back, and this is kind of summarizing our paper as well, that having herders and the field technicians on the ground with the sheep is incredibly important. Herding is an age-old skill, and it's imperative that the livestock have some human presence with them, especially at night when the sheep are vulnerable. So having trained herders, and then our field technicians were working to help support the herders. We only had one this year that was a field technician working with the herders, and that was effective because the herders have become so skilled in using these methods. Using multiple livestock guardian dogs, and really the big white dogs, Great Pyrenees, they've worked out great for us. We want to make sure that we don't have dogs that are too aggressive, because we also have a lot of recreationists that are out there on the landscape with their own dogs going for hikes and bicycle rides and stuff. So our dogs are not the super aggressive ones, which is actually working better with wolves, because these dogs stay with the band rather than trying to chase wolves and try to attack them. And we just don't see a purpose in the more aggressive animals toward wolves, because first of all, it isn't non-lethal. You can end up losing both dogs and wolves if you use too aggressive a dog, and putting the dogs at risk is just unnecessary. The dogs should be there to alert humans that there are that wolves or other predators are present, and then the people should be able to respond and help tag team with the dogs. That's the best use of them. Knowing where the established packs are, being able to monitor them, and then having the right tools in place. And one of the key things that we learned about the tools is that we have to be able to shift them around. If you only use one tool, say we only use Flattery, eventually the wolves would habituate to that particular tool being used. And so we wanted to make sure that we could have different tools that were being used, changing it up so that we avoid having any kind of habituation to the tools that we have. Also having a reliable communication system in place so that there's good communication between the herders, the sheep operations, the biologists on the ground was essential. And because our herders are from Peru, they speak Spanish, they very rarely speak English. We made sure that our team was fluent in Spanish as well, so that we could communicate with them in their own language. And that was really important to helping us. Beyond all of that, one of the most essential parts of this project was having a good, strong communication collaboration level at the community level, so that the community is engaged in the success of the project. The community is engaged in making sure that that we have the tools that we need, the support that we need, and then helping us work through some of the tougher decisions that have to be made. If you come to certain conflicts that, if there has to be a hard decision made, that they're part of that decision being made. so the community feels like they have, you know, that they are engaged and that they are really part of the solutions as well. And then funding. Unfortunately, in our area, most of the funding that's provided through the federal government is provided to kill predators. That's starting to change, but it's a slow change. And so funding coming from private sources has been essential to be able to fund non-lethal coexistence funding rather than the lethal. This is from one of our project partners, who's the county commissioner, and I think he said it probably best, so that if you can prevent depredation, it's the least costly alternative, the safest alternative. You know, it's a way of working with nature rather than against her. And I think that's what we've seen throughout the course of wildlife management, especially in our particular area, and especially in regard to predators, that our government seems to be focused on trying to react to conflicts and doing so in a way that puts the blame and the impact on the predator. And we feel like it is time for a paradigm shift, that we are able to help rebuild wild populations and put that responsibility back onto the people who are using the land, and do so in a way that helps support them, because everybody wins in this project. You know, the producers are winning, the wolves are winning. You know, you find a way to make it so that everybody benefits from it, but it does take everybody's support and collaboration. This is typically what's going on this time of year. We have an annual trailing of the sheep festival, so there's a lot of support for the livestock community within our area. Of course, with COVID this year, it's not happening, but we tend to have some pretty big parades going on for sheep in the area. It's part of our tradition here in the valley, and you know, it's something that we're very proud of as well. These methods also work with cattle on landscapes. They can be used in a variety of different ways, whether it's people's pastures, their backyards, or these more open landscapes. And with cattle, there's additional tools that are really helpful across the landscape. So you have to kind of adjust depending on how large your landscape is, but we're seeing really big success examples coming from cattle operations as well here in the Western United States. And with that, that's our project partners. Want to always thank them. They're just terrific. And we have a very integrated system where we're really just learning together on how these tools, these methods work, and how we can best serve the community and our wildlife. So with that, I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation there, Suzanne. That's of great interest to us here at the European Wilderness Society, as well as we embark on our own livestock protection projects to help farmers protect their livestock against predators as well. It looks like we have a few questions in the chat for you. Yeah, first of all, from Peter, because they are less fearful, do guarded sheep show higher productivity, and do you measure this?
Are the sheep showing more productivity? Is that was the question? Sorry,
yes,
I'll stop.
I believe.
Okay. Let's see. I guess it's the reverse, really, that the sheep, when they're under a lot of stress, especially from predation, that's when their productivity really drops. So that the sheep in our area are not under stress, it definitely maintains their productivity, rather than I say maybe increases it. But these sheep are far less stressed when they don't have to worry about predators coming in and attacking them, and they do remember it. They do get very stressed. And of course the dogs, you know, the dogs are really part of their family. So if a dog gets injured as well, it also, the sheep associate that as well as the dogs do with a lot of stress. So these methods are really helpful in maintaining low stress on the livestock and the dogs as well. Great.
We have another comment from Mirjam Silber. She first of all like to thank you very much for your presentation, and she wishes that people in Germany, including shepherds, hunters, and politicians, would be able to find out about the positive outcomes in projects like yours. She's asking if she could translate your presentation and study into German and use this information in her own presentations regarding livestock protection.
Yes, absolutely. We want to share everything that we've learned, and we want to learn from others as well. And very happy to share these methods. I've worked now all over the world in helping people convert some of the methods that we're using in places like Israel and Australia and parts of Africa and stuff. So I'm very happy to help in any place that we can share our methods and also learn. I mean, we're just at the very beginning of understanding, how predators view the landscape. And I'm sure we're going to uncover new methods as we continue to study how these non-lethal measures work, what's most effective, and what is sustainable over time and helps rebuild biodiversity on the landscape. So anything we can do to help anyone, we're happy to do.
That's great to hear. That's why we hold these events to foster these connections across the world on topics that we all have a common interest in. It'd be great if you could put your email in the chat so that Miriam could potentially contact you for further information, or anyone else, I guess.
Yeah.
That would be perfect if you're happy to do that. While you do that, I have a question from my end as well. What were the lobbying efforts in terms of trying to convince the government and politicians in Idaho and Wyoming to get on side of this livestock protection project? Was it successful, or are you still facing challenges in this regard?
Idaho and Wyoming are probably the two toughest states in the United States for preserving predators on the landscape. They are very politically against predators, and it's really been a tough area, especially for wolves. It is kind of the Old West mentality here. And so if we can do it on the ground here in Idaho, I'm certain we can do it anywhere. And I think that the best part of our efforts in terms of having an impact on the political system here is just the duration that we've been able to maintain success on the ground. We tried the route of going to the state legislature and to the commissions and asking them, just to explore these ideas of non-lethal, that they were working in other areas. And the feedback we usually get was, oh gosh, it might work in some other area, but it's not going to work here. So we had to be able to demonstrate that it was going to be effective here. And that's what we focused on, is just being able to show them that these methods are sustainable, they're effective, they're cheaper. You save money doing them over the long term, and that everybody really wins from it. And I think that that's probably the most compelling part of what we're doing that is changing. So now we're starting to see changes at the federal government level where they're investing money into non-lethal specialists across the states in the country that have a wolf population. That's a huge leap forward. I mean, 20 years ago, it would never have happened. So we are making progress, and it's encouraging. It's just painfully slow. So if we can show other examples from parts of Europe and other places where these things are working on the ground, the more that we work together to build that evidence that these are great tools, that it's a great approach, I think we can work together to change the entire paradigm of wildlife management from being very reactive and control-oriented, how humans control, back to more of a, how does nature control? How do we work with nature in a way that best provides support for the ecosystem and that produces outcomes that we all want? And I think that's the direction that we're going.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Suzanne, for telling us about how livestock protection actually reduces wolf predation compared to when there are areas that don't have livestock protection. So thank you very much once again for your presentation, and we appreciate you joining us here at the International Wilderness Week.
Thanks for what all of you are doing.